Join me on a trip to Ottawa. We'll take in an NHL game, watch some minor hockey, zip through downtown Ottawa, and go to the Canadian War Museum. Come on, Ottawa awaits, and life should be fun. Ottawa is Canada's capital city. It has a population of around 1 million people. Ottawa is about 450 kilometers from Toronto, or about a 4.5-hour car ride. I departed Oshawa around 2:30 in the afternoon and traveled up Highway 115 to Highway 7. From there, it was still a long way, but it was a gorgeous car ride. Much of the southern tip of Ontario is part of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Lowland physical region. This includes Niagara, Windsor, London, Toronto, and Oshawa. This means that there's great soil for growing things, including fruits and veggies. You'll see a lot of farms growing crops in these areas. The population density, or how many people are in a given area in southern Ontario, is much greater than in the north. As I traveled along Highway 7, you could clearly see when the physical region changed from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Lowlands into the Canadian Shield. The exposed rock and the rocky cliffs that I was driving beside gave me giant clues that I was now in the Canadian Shield. The Canadian Shield covers a huge area of Canada, about 50%. It covers about 8 million square kilometers in the world. Much of that is in Canada, but it does stretch to Greenland and down into the United States. The Shield is a huge area of exposed Precambrian rock. The Canadian Shield was formed about 3 billion years ago. It used to have greater hills and mountains than we have now, but through weathering they were worn down flatter. Then the glaciers came, scraping the soil away like a bulldozer and leaving open rock behind. That soil, once the glaciers melted, was left behind in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence region. As you can see from the drive along Highway 7, the Canadian Shield has many scenic areas. The cliffs along the highway were formed when dynamite and blasting was used to smooth the way for the highway to go through. Mining is a big industry in the Canadian Shield. Another big industry is tourism. Because of all the lakes and rivers in the area, lots of people have cottages, trailers, or like to camp. Because the ground is made of rock and rock doesn't absorb water, there are many beautiful lakes in the Shield. Fishing, boating, and outdoor activities are very popular in this geographic region. After many hours of driving, we finally arrived at Ottawa, and we made it in time for the 7 o'clock Sens game.
Hi everybody, we're at the Canadian Tire Center going to see the Sens. Let's go Sens!
The Ottawa Senators are playing the San Jose Sharks at home at the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa. The Ottawa Senators have been an NHL team since 1992. The Canadian Tire Center fits over 18,000 spectators. Lots of people to cheer the Sens on. During the two 20-minute intermissions between periods, there's always lots to see, like this party bus, or party Zamboni, I should say. After the third period ended, it was off to bed for me, a night at a hotel, getting ready for hockey the next day. The next day I met some friends at the Sensplex Arena to watch some minor league hockey. Maybe not quite so many fans, but just as exciting. Now, don't let me trick you into believing that Ottawa is just about hockey. There's so much to see, learn, and do in Ottawa. In 1857, Queen Victoria chose Ottawa as the capital city of the colony of Canada. It wasn't until 10 years later, on July 1st, 1867, that Canada actually became its own country. There are so many historic and gorgeous buildings in Ottawa, such as the Chateau Laurier, a 660,000 square foot hotel constructed between 1908 and 1912 by the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway Company. Or the strikingly built Parliament buildings. They were originally built in 1866, but almost all of the buildings, except the library, was destroyed in a fire in 1916. They were rebuilt by 1927. The Peace Tower is a noticeable feature of the center block, and it is the tallest building in Ottawa. No other building is allowed to be higher. The Canadian flag flies from the top of the tower. Parliament is where the federal government meets to discuss issues involving all of Canada. It is where the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and his cabinet meet. The buildings are where the Senate and House of Commons meet. The Senate is the upper house of Canadian government. It has 105 members that are appointed, not voted in. The Senate members stay in their role until they turn 75. Their role is to revise and come up with new legislation. They also deal with national issues. The House of Commons has 338 members who are voted in. They represent the different areas, or ridings, around Canada, and they represent those ridings' interests. There are many other interesting places to visit in Ottawa. These include the Museum of the Bank of Canada, where you can learn about the financial system in an interactive way, the Canadian Mint, where you can see money being made, the National Archives, where you can see firsthand many documents that were written in the past, and the Supreme Court of Canada, the highest and most powerful court in the Canadian justice system. One interesting place that we did decide to stop and visit was the Canadian War Museum. The museum serves not just as an educational facility, but as a place of remembrance. It is the National Museum of the country's military history.
Hi guys, I'm at the War Museum in Ottawa. We just started. We are in the Early Wars of Canada section.
The exhibits start with warfare among the First Peoples of Canada. Here, you can learn about the roles that Indigenous peoples played before and during European settlement. This miniature model of a Haudenosaunee village shows how longhouses, fields, and communities were laid out, and the importance of water for transportation and life. This is a model of a Haudenosaunee warrior and a French soldier after the Great Peace Agreement of 1701. This cannon mortar was used as part of a French defense in 1758 against a siege by the British. You can see many weapons used in the War of 1812 between the Americans and the British Loyalists and their First Nations allies. As I worked my way through the museum sections and walked through artifacts from the First World War, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Afghanistan War, and so many other efforts of Canadian peacekeepers, it was very sobering. The museum is set up to give you a feel of what it might have been like for soldiers living in the trenches, hungry, cold, perpetually wet, and far from home. Or what it might have been like to be on a large warship, searching for U-boats and enemies.
Radar contact 3240, mile and a quarter, sir. Tell the radar operator to hold on to the con.
The lower level of the museum is home to many tanks, large artillery, and other vehicles used in war. The size and weight of them was astonishing. By the end of the tour, I was even more grateful than ever for the sacrifices that the brave men and women of the Canadian military and their families at home had made. The sacrifice made so that we can live in this great country and not be afraid for our lives when we go to school or to work. The museum was so awe-inspiring. The War Memorial, found outside, amongst an intersection, is another large reminder of all that people have given so that we can live how we live today. I packed a lot into my trip to Ottawa, but there was still so much more I could have done. I didn't even get to the Museum of Nature, the Museum of History, the Agriculture Museum, or so many other places that I wanted to visit. Maybe I'll come back in the winter and go skate on the Rideau. Maybe I'll make it to Byward Market and do some shopping. There's so much to do in Ottawa, I can't wait to come back. Thanks for coming on this trip with me.